Now let's go ahead and get started with our question and answer session. And Ladina, it looks like you have the first question for our panel.
Right. We'd like to ask some questions to the presenters to know them better. And I'm starting with Carla. Carla, which areas of C innovation, startup focus can be most appropriate for developing women's activity and creativity? Can you explain us and give us some advices about that when you are the expert?
Absolutely. So there are so many emerging startups right now and incubators that it's, you know, the field is wide open right now. I think because, you know, as Jennifer Jackson talked about, you know, our enterprise expertise across the board of working with doctors, nurses, technologists, the IT groups, the regulatory, the operational context, the actual clinical workflows for patients, and knowing so much in each category. Right now, any kind of healthcare startup is starving for that type of expertise. So I think there's immediate entree into a number of these. You can start as an intern. You can start as an advisor. You can start as a member of the advisory councils. And so there are so many different categories. It's so wide open space. And one of the things that's very, very interesting to me is that right now, there's so much diversity in, you know, only women comprising 14% of leadership in health tech, and clearly, you know, lacking the gender diversity. But interestingly enough, right now, females are composing 23% of the leadership positions in early stage innovation. So, and those are companies that are, you know, participating in incubators and also, you know, if you will, accelerators. They're looking for women. They're looking for women with the math, science, and broad spectrum on understanding patient care impact in all categories. So right now, the field's very, very open to everybody. It just depends on which niche or area that you might be interested, but you can volunteer, you can become an intern, you can become an employee, you can become an advisor. And so pretty much right now, the world is our oyster, because women's health problems and that whole area of women's health is really comprising 37% of the total market right now. And they need to hear our voice. We're the caregivers. We are the people that, you know, understand all the women's health issues and the health disparity. And we definitely, you know, we manage our families, our patients, our parents, our children, you know, our husbands, our communities. And I just think that, you know, all the thrust is there for us to just kind of come in on the movement right now and just be present. So real excited to talk about more about that.
Thanks so much, Carla. It's really happy. Well, it makes me really happy to hear, you know, how many young women are not only getting into the health technology field, but also on the entrepreneurial side like you are. That's a great segue into our next question for Jennifer Jackson. Jennifer, what do you think is the advantage of working as a clinical engineer, but for a medical device manufacturer?
Thank you. Yes. You know, I was really hesitant to go into industry, but part of the reason why I chose to do that was because I felt like, you know, technology had gotten to a point, I wanted it to do more. And so I found an opportunity here in Southern California with Masimo. Certainly there are opportunities all over the world, as there are many more medical device manufacturers that are starting in different countries. What I've really enjoyed about it is that healthcare is a very universal concept. Patients are still going to be patients no matter what country you're in. The parameters that we're measuring, the human body is similar enough that whether you want to go into a very technical part of the work, designing the algorithms, that it's available. And I think very much to Carla's point, women's, we understand that women express cardiovascular issues differently. There's a lot that is happening right now that we're understanding more about the physiology and the reactions to certain medications and other things. So there's plenty of opportunity on a very technical or research side to look at new algorithms, to look at new ways to measure some of these parameters and derive information from that. What I've enjoyed in a more of a marketing role and strategic business development role is being able to work with many people from around the world and hear their different issues and learn more about what are their different pain points. So, for me, it's been extremely rewarding and something that I wasn't necessarily able to do working for a single hospital organization. But I do absolutely agree with everything that Carla was saying, whether it's within the startup business or it's within industry. I think that women, people of color, I think that we're starting to see that perhaps our voices have not always been heard when it comes to some of the manufacturing and some of the delivery of technology. And there's so much, what we've seen is that those organizations that choose to include more diversity are more successful because those different points of view are recognized early on in the development life cycle. And so I think there's a great opportunity for everyone on the panel to, really step up and get more involved if you would choose to, because it's needed. And I think ultimately what it leads to will be better devices for the healthcare environment, again, whether it's in the hospital or it's at home.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you. Now I would like to ask Hannah. Hannah, how can you improve your professional and engineering skills if your work is in environments where opportunities for professional training and growth are limited? So how can you do that?
Thank you very much, Ladina, for this important question. Well, actually, this is the common situation for many biomedical engineers in developing countries or who are working in rural areas where the environment doesn't allow them, to grow professionally. In such situation, I would highly and strongly recommend to outreach to professional organizations such as the IEEE. CED provides excellent resources free of charge. Try to be connected with international professionals from all over the world. So many people, if you reach out to them through LinkedIn, social media, they'll be more than happy, to help you and assist you. I'm not exaggerating to say that I have personally learned a lot, through that approach. I myself work in an environment where opportunities for growth are very limited. And along with my colleagues at the Kuwait Association for Biomedical Engineers, have gathered and decided to make life easier for younger generation. And we have started continuous education program, professional training for junior engineers. And we collaborate a lot with international organizations. Sometimes there are certificate programs or professional programs that are expensive. I do acknowledge the cost factor, but nevertheless, there are so many opportunities and so many resources available online free of charge, and you just need to reach out to people and ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. All right, the next question is for Layla. What is the next AI application that you think will be widely implemented in the healthcare environment?
Thank you for the question. Well, as I said during my presentation, we are working on this expert system that we see to be added in management protocols of medical devices. But for sure, artificial intelligence is nowadays mostly implemented in diagnosis and treatment of different diseases. So I think that major breakthrough will first happen in this field.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to go to some additional questions in the Q&A. So the first one, and anyone can answer these, is from Dr. Yadin David. He says, how can we facilitate future innovations and at the same time support regulations that are not keeping up with rapid change and thus will not facilitate innovation? So Layla, you might be the most apt for this, but that friction between innovation and regulation and how do you balance that? And maybe Hannah, I know you kind of talked about that a bit as well. So whoever wants to take that.
So we think that any breakthrough can happen if you combine successfully all fields. So that is why in our work, we tend to combine the academia, the research with the regulatory requirements, and of course, with the general public, because you always want your solution to be accepted by the general public to create added value and benefits for the general public. You want to define a regulation on how your system will be used. So when I started working in biomedical engineering, this field wasn't present in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So all our research and all our work was focused on bringing biomedical engineering into Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also opening a new field of research that I have just presented during this webinar. And that is how I see this question answered.
Jenna, if you allow me, I'd like to add a few points. First of all, thank you very much for this important question. This question actually is the basis of our work, the Safe Care Initiative. We have noticed that, well, from personal experience, I worked for about a year at Siemens Healthcare, both in Germany and in their regional office in the UAE. And there was very consistent complaint from the staff over there that the regulations are very hindering and regulators are very rigid and conservative. And that, in so many occasions, have delayed their innovation. And in the Safe Care Initiative, we are introducing a new regularity framework, which we call the We Learn approach. The We Learn approach, it's an approach that invites multiple stakeholders, whether they are from academia, industry, patient, healthcare professional, people who are, maintaining and repairing these devices. We want them to sit together and innovate together and regulate together. Well, I do understand this is something non-traditional, but we are in non-traditional settings. Technology is developing at very fast pace, and if we cannot catch up with that, we will always be behind. If we look at the IT industry, for example, and information and communication industry, technology, along with regulation, have allowed us, to have very accessible product at very affordable prices, but we don't observe that in healthcare. And new technology are provided in the market on a daily basis, yet they cost a lot of money and they are very complicated to use. You need a special training for that, and at most you can utilize 10% of them. So with the new regulatory framework that we are proposing, and we hope that it will be adopted by so many countries in the world, we want to change that mindset. We want regulators and innovators, users, everybody, we want them to be at one table discussing how regulation should be for the betterment of the patient.
Great, thank you so much. I think those are great points. Let's see, we have another question in here. In our field, we see now fair gender balance in student cohorts. Things get again unbalanced if you climb the hierarchy of organizations. So less female representation as you go higher in terms of leadership in the organizations. What can we do for achieving gender balance at the managerial and above positions?
I must give a comment on this. Whenever I hear like we are women, we are doing the work, I get a goosebump because in science, in professional life, I really do not like division on a man and a woman, because I think that men and women both are capable of doing a very good job. And if you're really doing the good job, you'll be recognized, and at least you'll find a way to be recognized and to break that barrier. So I think that there is no universal policy or a way for solving this problem, because this problem will be present always. There are also in minority, but there are some examples on different problem as well. And do we think about that? So the professions tend to be divided on men and women, but I don't like that. I don't like that division, and I don't even like giving a place for discussion about this thing. So that's my point of view.
So Layla, you're talking about mostly let's build a supportive environment that supports
Yes.
the first group, the broad net for that, so we can get right.
Yeah, let's speak about the work, let's speak about the position, and not on division on men and women. That's my point of view.
Jennifer Jackson, looks like you may have some comments.
Yes, and I completely agree with Layla's point that at the end of the day, it really does need to be about the work, and that many of the women that I do know have achieved their positions. They've absolutely deserved their positions, and so have the men that are their counterparts. I do want to address the concept of cognitive bias. And I'm not an expert in the field, but I've done enough reading, and I've now recognized that I've had experiences in my life where people have made assumptions about me because of my role as a woman, as a mother. I literally had a former boss make a decision on my behalf that I could not travel because I had a child at home that I had to take care of. And I would suggest in situations like that, I think understanding a little bit more about your organization's environment and perhaps some of the, again, those cognitive biases. So I don't think anyone wants to come out and say women do not deserve to be in these higher roles. I do think there are situations where folks just were raised a certain way and they don't, they just, it's hard for them to perhaps put away that thinking, the way they were trained, the way they were raised, their own traditional values. I think it's very difficult for them to come face to face with that, and make very difficult for what might be a weird decision for them when perhaps they have an alternative that better fits what they're comfortable with. And my role for that has always been, and I've just been very fortunate that when I've recognized these kinds of cognitive biases being in place, I've left. Because my own mantra has been, if my organization cannot recognize the value that I bring, then they don't deserve me. And I need to go somewhere else where I will be valued. And that's led to me, I've been at roles and jobs for 7 months because it became very clear that it was not going to work for me because I was a woman and it was a man's world in that organization. So I do think there needs, and I would also press upon women, maybe read up a little bit more about how certain cognitive biases may influence the decisions that we make, our own beliefs in ourselves and where we think we deserve to be within the roles, and be more comfortable with that. And don't be afraid to walk away if you feel like your organization doesn't see your value.
I think that's a great point, Jennifer, kind of understanding that there may be some biases, because we all wear, different labels for various reasons, our gender, race, religion, things of that nature. But I think you make a even better point kind of driving it home, the importance of working for an organization where you thrive instead of just survive. And I think that's important no matter who you are. So awesome. And I know Salome had to drop, and Salome has talked a lot about being a wife and a mother, and particularly in Kenya, and how she's managed that with her profession. So maybe we'll be able to get more from that. I think we have time for a few more questions. So this next one, maybe Carla and Jennifer, you may have some thoughts on this. Elliot from the US says, many of you have advanced degrees, including master's, MBA, and PhD credentials. Could you please explain why you made the investment in time, energy, and money to earn these degrees? Also, could you describe how those advanced degrees have helped you expand your career or increase your ability to impact healthcare?
Jennifer, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, real quick. So I have, if you want to call it an advanced degree, I do have a master's in business administration. I made that choice because for me, it was a very personal choice. I come from a family of engineers. My father was an engineer. My grandfather was an engineer. Both grandfathers were engineers. So I was at a point in my career where I wanted to expand my horizons. And so the MBA gave me an opportunity to learn more about the business world. Not that I ever had any intention of going into business, truly. I just wanted to understand more about how the world worked when it came to business. And so I pursued that. And I made that choice. Because I was an engineer, and engineering is very much an applied science. I felt like I'd already applied my science in the working world. So a master's in engineering wasn't necessarily going to help me, whereas the MBA definitely taught me how to look at things slightly differently from a more commercial perspective, regulatory perspective, international economic perspective, which was fabulous. So for me, personal choice.
So for me, I decided to get an MBA as well. I emphasized in finance because I knew in the whole sphere of clinical engineering and the ROI contributions that was going to be a really important area. I didn't know anything about corporate finance. And so that really, really, really helped me in a huge way. I also went back and got a degree in hospital administration, and then also in technology leadership after that. And I will tell you, by the School of Hard Knocks, I've learned fintech and also venture capital. And I'm constantly learning because, it goes all the way from, our engineering backgrounds and our initial profession, all the way through how do you learn more? How are you in even par with the people that are leading the industry and actually have the opportunity and backing to make things happen? And so you really need to be able to have those conversations with people and show up well, and to be able to pivot. And so when we talk about the horizontal expertise, that includes the higher level understandings of the entire market. And, the way that the money actually determines how far you can advance in all the different categories. So I would definitely say get involved in professional organizations, learn as much as you can, get mentors, and, take courses and internships if possible, because it's going to be really, really important. You build a lot of self-confidence, but then you also build some very important relationships in all of the key areas as well.
Great. Thank you, ladies, so much. And we are just about at the end of our time. And You know, I don't know about you guys, but I have 3 full pages of notes here that I took from the presenters. And again, it's so heartening to know that we have such great role models out there. And there's several comments in here just saying, you know, thanks so much. I think we had a note from an aspiring biomedical engineer about how this really inspired her to keep going. So I just want to thank our panelists. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise. I wanted to thank Calroy, who is driving this from behind. Thank you so much, Calroy. And also all of the folks who did recordings. Make sure that you go on and look at that. So thank you so much for attending our webinar today. Ladina, did you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all the participants for the presentations. It has been a fantastic webinar. Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience, and good luck to everyone.